This HOA, Karen destroyed my trash can 57 times with her $60,000 Escalade, so I replaced it with a concrete one and watched her destroy her own SUV instead. What started as morning property demolition ended with criminal charges, a $12,000 settlement, and one very expensive life lesson about picking the wrong neighbor to bully. Picture this. The sharp crack of plastic shattering echoes through dawn silence, followed by the metallic scrape of bumper-meeting asphalt as a pearl-white Escalade speeds away, leaving my garbage scattered like confetti across the driveway. Again. But here's the thing about bullies, they never expect their victims to fight back with actual concrete evidence. By the time I was done, this self-appointed compliance officer had demolished her own vehicle, exposed a $47,000 embezzlement scheme, and learned the hard way that some neighbors refuse to be intimidated by clipboards and fake authority. Seriously, what would you do if your neighbor was basically playing demolition derby with your property every single morning? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I want to see if this kind of HOA madness is happening in your town too. Let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. My name's Marcus Holloway, I'm 45 and I've been an electrician for 22 years. Recently divorced, fighting for joint custody of my two teenagers, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, one of those cookie-cutter HOA neighborhoods in suburban Ohio where everyone's lawn has to be exactly 2.5 inches tall and mailboxes come in 3 approved colors. I bought the corner lot house 3 years ago right after the divorce papers were signed. Figured it'd be a fresh start, you know? The kids could have their own rooms, decent schools, safe neighborhood. What I didn't figure on was dealing with Brenda Whitmore, a 52-year-old widow who appointed herself the neighborhood's compliance officer, a title that doesn't actually exist in our HOA bylaws, by the way. Brenda drives a pearl-white Escalade that's bigger than some studio apartments. She moved in about 3 years back after her husband died, no kids, retired from managing a bank downtown. The woman knows every HOA rule by heart and treats our monthly dues like her personal slush fund. She's buddies with the HOA president, Gerald Thornfield, which basically makes her untouchable. Now here's where geography becomes important. My corner lot means the trash pickup requires me to place my bin near the street every Tuesday morning. City ordinance says within 3 feet of the curb, which puts it right at the edge of where Brenda takes her daily power walk at exactly 6:15 a.m. The first incident happened on a Tuesday in September, second week of school. I'm getting the kids ready, coffee brewing, that familiar diesel rumble of the garbage truck still 20 minutes away. Then crack the sound of plastic exploding like a gunshot. I rush outside to find my trash can obliterated, garbage scattered across my driveway like someone detonated a confetti bomb filled with banana peels and coffee grounds. There's Brenda, backing up her Escalade, rolling down her window with this fake, concerned expression. "Oh my," she says, not a trace of sincerity in her voice. "These streets are just so narrow. I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing." Old thing? I'd bought it the week before for $23 at Home Depot. But I kept my cool, figured it was an accident. Spent 20 minutes picking up soggy cereal boxes and coffee filters while the smell of diesel exhaust hung in the morning air. Emma and Tyler watched from the front window, embarrassed their dad was crawling around the driveway in his pajamas. That first week, it happened 3 more times. Same routine 6:15 sharp, that rumble of her oversized engine, the sickening crunch of plastic meeting steel, then silence as she drove away. By Friday, I was getting suspicious. By the following Tuesday, I knew it was intentional. Mrs. Olivia, my elderly neighbor across the street, confirmed what I suspected. "She takes the long way around on purpose," she told me in her careful English. "Plenty of room on other side, but she drives close to your can every time." I tried reasoning with Brenda first. Caught her on the sidewalk during one of her afternoon patrols. "Hey, about the trash can situation." But she cut me off with this saccharine smile. "Marcus, I understand you're new to community living. These streets were designed for normal-sized vehicles, not oversized containers blocking traffic flow. Perhaps you should consider placement timing adjustments." Placement timing adjustments. Like there's some magical hour when the garbage truck doesn't need the can at the curb. That night, I started researching. Property rights, HOA bylaws, municipal ordinances. Turns out trash cans placed on public right-of-way still constitute personal property. More importantly, our HOA has no specific rules about placement timing or materials, just that they can't be visible from the street, except on collection day. By month's end, I'd replaced 4 trash cans at $92 total. The kids were getting stressed about the daily drama, and my custody evaluator was taking notes about neighborhood stability issues. Something had to change. That's when the smirk started. Brenda began making direct eye contact during her morning demolition runs, this little satisfied smile that said she knew exactly what she was doing. Game on. 2 weeks into October, Brenda escalated from property destruction to psychological warfare. I came home from a job site to find a certified letter waiting, the kind that makes your stomach drop before you even open the envelope. The thick paper felt expensive between my fingers, and the smell of fresh printer ink told me this wasn't some form letter she'd been sitting on. Improper trash receptacle placement creating traffic hazard, it read in official legalese that would make a paralegal proud. Section 4.7.3, no obstruction of vehicular traffic patterns. The deadline, 72 hours to remedy violation or face $50 in daily fines. She'd obviously rushed this thing through the system while the board was still reeling from my documentation at the last meeting. Here's where my years of troubleshooting electrical codes paid off. When something doesn't add up, you dig deeper. That evening, I dove into municipal law like I was hunting down a short circuit. After 3 hours of cross-referencing city ordinances with county regulations, I hit the jackpot. The city code explicitly requires trash placement within 3 feet of the curb on collection day. More importantly, HOA jurisdiction ends at the property line. They literally can't regulate public right-of-way. I remembered reading about a similar case online where a homeowner in California beat their HOA using this exact argument. I spent the weekend building my defense like I was preparing for the electrical contractor's exam all over again. Ring doorbell camera positioned perfectly to capture the morning routine. $47 for peace of mind. Professional survey confirming my placement complied with all city requirements. Even convinced Mrs. Olivia to provide a written statement, though her hands shook slightly as she signed it. "I don't want trouble," she whispered, "but this isn't right." Meanwhile, Brenda was busy playing social media prosecutor. She flooded the Nextdoor app with posts about reckless homeowners endangering children and dangerous corner obstacles forcing responsible drivers into oncoming traffic. The comments section became a battlefield between her 3 loyal supporters and everyone else who thought she'd completely lost touch with reality. Then came the twist that showed just how desperate she was getting. A buddy at City Hall, Dave works in the permit office, we've done electrical work together, called me Tuesday morning with interesting news. The city had received 4 separate complaints about my dangerous corner, each claiming different witness perspectives but obviously written by the same person. The timestamp showed them all submitted within 15 minutes at 2:47 a.m. Professional detective work this was not. "Marcus," Dave chuckled over the phone, "either your neighborhood has an epidemic of insomniacs with identical writing styles, or somebody's working overtime to build a case against you." By Thursday's board meeting, I'd compiled a folder thick enough to choke a horse. The community center smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and decades of boring municipal meetings. 12 homeowners showed up, a record crowd that had President Thornfield nervously adjusting his tie every 30 seconds. Brenda sat at the board table wearing a navy blazer that screamed, "I mean business," but I noticed the slight tremor in her hands when she reached for her water glass. She knew what was coming. When they called for old business, I stood up with my documentation. I'd like to address the violation notice regarding trash can placement. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as the room went dead silent. I read the city ordinance aloud, word for word, displayed my survey results showing perfect compliance. The coup de grace was casually mentioning my consultation with Amanda Sterling, a property rights attorney who'd handled dozens of HOA cases. She found the selective enforcement patterns particularly interesting, I added, watching Brenda's face go pale. President Thornfield cleared his throat 3 times before speaking. "Well, this requires further review. We'll table this matter pending additional consideration." Translation: they had nothing and everyone knew it. But Brenda wasn't done. As we filed out, she cornered me in the parking lot under the buzzing security lights. Here's where she really showed her true colors. "You think you're so smart," she hissed, loud enough for the dozen homeowners still chatting nearby to hear every word. "People like you come into decent neighborhoods and think rules don't apply. Well, I've got news for you. This is just the beginning." Mrs. Rodriguez from Maple Street actually gasped, Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, suddenly found his keys fascinating. The racial undertones hung in the humid October air like smoke from a house fire, obvious to everyone present. My phone, positioned casually in my shirt pocket, captured every venomous syllable. That night, Emma asked why the mean lady hated us so much. Tyler wanted to know if we'd have to move again. I tucked them into bed, promising everything would work out, but privately, I was calculating the cost of this war. 3 replacement trash cans, 14 hours of documentation, attorney consultation fees mounting. But something had shifted in the community. Other homeowners were whispering about board overreach and asking uncomfortable questions about selective enforcement. Brenda's parking lot meltdown had revealed what many suspected: this wasn't about traffic safety or community standards. It was about power, control, and putting people she didn't like in their place. The next morning brought a telling change. Instead of her usual aggressive ramming approach, Brenda drove past my trash can at crawling speed, studying it like a general planning her next assault. The pattern was evolving, which meant bigger trouble was coming. November hit Pinewood Gardens like a cold slap in the face, and Brenda hit back even harder. While I was congratulating myself on winning round 1, she was busy weaponizing every obscure HOA bylaw she could find. The woman had apparently spent weeks combing through our community guidelines like a prosecutor building a RICO case. The assault came in waves. First, a violation notice about my grass height, apparently 2.75 inches, exceeded the 2.5-inch maximum by a criminal quarter-inch. Then my mailbox color, which had faded from heritage blue to what she classified as unauthorized weathered navy. Finally, 3 tiny tears in my window screens that you'd need a magnifying glass to spot. Each violation carried a $50 fine with 10-day payment deadlines. The kicker? I spent an entire Saturday afternoon walking the neighborhood with a measuring tape and camera, documenting identical violations on 14 other properties. Gerald Thornfield's grass was pushing 3 inches. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox had faded to roughly the same shade as mine. Half the houses on Maple Street had screen damage from the summer hailstorm. But somehow, only my violations merited official attention. While Brenda was playing bylaw prosecutor, I was having coffee with Dale Kowalski at Home Depot's contractor desk. Dale's been pouring concrete for 23 years, and when I mentioned my trash can troubles, his weathered face broke into a knowing grin. "You know," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee with a paint stir stick, "there's nothing in city code about what materials you can use for trash containers. Plastic, metal, concrete, as long as it holds garbage and fits the size requirements, you're golden." That conversation planted a seed that would grow into Brenda's worst nightmare. 60 pounds of concrete mix, steel rebar for reinforcement, and a clever modification to a standard plastic shell. Total cost $47 versus the $350 I was facing in mounting fines and replacement cans. But first, I had to deal with her harassment campaign. I spent Tuesday evening creating a comprehensive photo documentation of every comparable violation in our neighborhood. Wednesday morning, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board about selective and discriminatory enforcement patterns. Here's something I learned from handling electrical permits for 2 decades. Bureaucrats hate when you use their own systems against them. My complaint forced the board to either enforce rules equally across all properties or admit they were targeting me specifically. Neither option worked in Brenda's favor. The real twist came when I started analyzing the demographics of her violation targets. Over the past year, Brenda had issued 67 violation notices. 49 went to single parents, elderly residents, or minorities. Only 18 targeted married couples or longtime homeowners. The pattern was so obvious it practically screamed lawsuit. I remember reading about Fair Housing Act violations and property management discrimination in HOA enforcement can trigger federal investigations. The thought of Brenda explaining her citation patterns to a civil rights attorney made me smile for the first time in weeks. Friday afternoon, I started my weekend concrete project. Emma and Tyler thought it was hilarious, helping me mix cement in the garage while classic rock played on my paint-splattered radio. The smell of setting concrete brought back memories of helping my dad pour our basement floor 30 years ago. That distinctive alkaline scent that meant something permanent was being built. The engineering was simple but effective. Hollow bottom section for weight distribution, drainage holes maintained for functionality, exterior appearance identical to every other trash can on the block. From the outside, it looked completely normal. Inside, 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete waited to teach Brenda a physics lesson about immovable objects. Monday morning, I positioned my newly reinforced trash can in exactly the same spot as always. 6:15 came right on schedule, along with the rumble of Brenda's oversized engine. But this time, something was different. Her approach was slower, more cautious. She'd obviously noticed the can looked identical but somehow felt suspicious. The first collision came at about 15 miles per hour, her usual ramming speed. The sound was completely different. Instead of that sick crunch of breaking plastic, there was a solid thunk followed by the screech of metal on concrete. Her Escalade's running board bent like aluminum foil, while my trash can sat there looking mildly offended. I watched through my kitchen window, coffee mug warm against my palms, as Brenda sat in her SUV for a full 30 seconds, clearly confused by what had just happened. She revved the engine and tried again from a different angle. Same result, more damage to her vehicle, zero damage to my concrete fortress. The beauty of the whole setup was its complete legality. No city ordinances violated, no HOA rules broken, just a homeowner upgrading his trash receptacle with better materials. If she wanted to keep ramming it, that was her choice and her insurance claim to file. Over the next week, Brenda made increasingly desperate attempts to damage my concrete creation. Each collision left new scratches and dents on her pearl-white Escalade while my can remained smugly intact. The irony was delicious. Her own aggressive behavior was destroying the very vehicle she used as a weapon. By Friday, her SUV showed nearly $800 in accumulated damage. Mine showed a few scuff marks that made it look more authentic. The neighborhood was starting to talk, and for once, Brenda wasn't controlling the narrative. By mid-November, Brenda had transformed from neighborhood busybody into full-blown private investigator. The woman was so obsessed with my trash can that she'd probably dreamed about it in flowcharts and conspiracy theories. I'd catch glimpses of her pearl-white Escalade now sporting a growing collection of dents and scratches, cruising past my house at odd hours like some suburban stalker. The first sign of her detective work came on a Tuesday morning when Mrs. Olivia called, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus, that woman was in your driveway last night with a flashlight and some kind of scale. I watched from my bedroom window. She was trying to weigh your trash can." I had to laugh at the mental image. Brenda, probably in her navy blazer and sensible shoes, sneaking around my property at midnight with a bathroom scale, trying to solve the mystery of the indestructible trash receptacle. The woman needed a hobby that didn't involve trespassing. Her investigation intensified throughout the week. Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, mentioned she'd cornered him at the hardware store, interrogating him about concrete purchases and asking which residents had bought unusual materials recently. She'd even started stalking my social media accounts, looking for construction hints in my Facebook posts about weekend projects. The twist that really showed her desperation came when she tried to weaponize city bureaucracy again. Thursday afternoon, a building inspector knocked on my door, a tired-looking guy named Pete who clearly had better things to do than investigate trash cans. "Ma'am filed a complaint about potential building code violations," he explained, checking boxes on his clipboard with the enthusiasm of someone filling out tax forms. Something about unauthorized concrete structures on residential property. I walked Pete around to the trash can where he spent about 30 seconds examining it before shaking his head. "It's a garbage container, not a foundation. No permits required, no violations present. Honestly, I've seen people build entire sheds without this much scrutiny." But Brenda wasn't finished with her official harassment campaign. The following week brought a notice from the HOA demanding immediate access for compliance verification of my property. The letter, obviously drafted by Brenda and rubber-stamped by President Thornfield, claimed they needed to inspect my exterior modifications for safety violations. This is where my research into property rights came in handy. I'd spent hours reading about Fourth Amendment protections and HOA authority limitations after that first violation notice. The landmark case was Narstedt versus Lakeside Village, where courts ruled that HOAs can't conduct fishing expeditions on private property without specific cause or emergency circumstances. My response was polite but firm. No private property access without a court order or genuine emergency. If they wanted to inspect my legally compliant trash receptacle, they could examine it from the public sidewalk like everyone else. The smell of Brenda's frustration was almost as satisfying as fresh concrete. Meanwhile, her vehicle was becoming a rolling advertisement for the durability